Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be showing you how to make this baby onesie. So this one is without the hood. You will have the option to leave it without or make it with the hood. So this is the smallest size, 0 to 3 months. There will be sizes for up to 12 months. And this is in color light green. So the stitches are front post puff stitch and a half double crochet. That's what makes up this really soft and thick pattern. Okay, so like I said, this is a 0 to 3 months. This is the smallest one. Now the hardest parts are right here, the very beginning, the first maybe 5 rows, which I will show you exactly what to do all the way, like all of this, because we are making the back a little bit higher than the front. And probably the little legs here are the next harder part, just because we have to do a little bit of decreasing. Again, I will get you through this all the way. Okay, so the other one that I have is the actual one that I'm making in this tutorial. So you will see this. Now I did add the little ears. They are not in the tutorial. If somebody wants to make them, let me know in the comments and I will make a quick tutorial on how to make them. Okay, so exactly the same. You can see we have the hood on top and we still have the neckline inside. So it's a little bit tighter and warmer. You can see like this. And everything else is exactly the same stitch. This is a size 3 to 6 months, and I have one more. I have a size 6 to 9 months in color mustard. So this is much bigger for a boy, and I have no ears on it. Everything exactly the same, only bigger. We'll be using measurements, so you will be able to make it the size that you want. Okay, so if you got interested in making this one, let's go and have a look at what we're going to need for this project. Okay, so to make this onesie, you're going to need scissors, a bunch of stitch markers. Maybe take about 10. You will definitely need 6, but 10 just in case. If you're a beginner, there will be extra places where you can mark to make it easier for yourself. A needle to hide your tails and a smaller needle for your buttons. A measuring tape in centimeters, because my chart that we are going to follow is in centimeters. Then we're going to need buttons, so 5 or 6. It really depends on the size that you're making and however many buttons you want to have in it. I will be making a size 3 to 6 months, and I just need 5. 5 should be enough. Okay. Then a hook. I will be using a 4mm hook that matches the yarn. So the yarn, okay, so any kind of lightweight yarn. So this is lightweight number 3 yarn. This is a Hobby Everyday Mega 100% acrylic. Use whatever you want, whatever you have, as long as it is the same yarn weight. You will be absolutely fine. You don't have to use acrylic. You want to use something else, use whatever you have, okay? Just as long as it is the same weight. Just because we are starting on a specific number of chains, and if your yarn will be much thicker or thinner than this, it will be problematic, okay? So there's approximately 300 meters and 100 grams. So this was a mega ball. It used to be 400 grams. I have made already something with it, so I have less left. Now, how much yarn you're going to need? So for the sizes, the smaller sizes, the 0 to 3 months and 3 to 6 months, 250 grams should be enough. Okay, now it might differ a little bit. If your yarn is way different than mine, you might need a little bit more or a little bit less. Okay, so this, what I have here, is just under 250 grams. This should really be enough for that size. Now for the 2 bigger sizes, especially if you're doing the hood, now you will be able to leave it off if you don't want it. You're gonna need less than 300 but more than 250. Okay, just because they are bigger with the hoods and all of that. Okay, so make sure you have enough yarn, choose your color, get your hook, get everything ready, and let's get started. Okay, so the very beginning of any of the sizes is exactly the same, and you have to follow me to the T. Okay, the first, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Okay, just because they are going to be very important to get the stitches right and to have the foundation correct. Okay, so we're going to start with chaining 53 chains. Make a slip knot and start chaining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and keep going until you have 53 chains. So I have chained 53 chains. Now we're going to start our foundation row. Okay, so add one extra chain. So chain 1, we're going to skip that chain, and starting from the second chain from the hook, we will make 1 single crochet into each chain. So 1, 2, 3, and keep going with 1 single crochet into each chain, and you should have 53 single crochets at the end of this row. Okay, so I have 53 single crochets. Now we're just going to have a quick measure. Okay, so measure from the very beginning where your hook is, and without pulling, all the way down. So you want this first row to measure about 30 to 34 centimeters in length. Okay, so 32, 33 would be the best, but 30 to 34 will be absolutely fine. It's just because of the neck circumference of the baby. All of those sizes are very similar. It's just a centimeter difference, so that should be absolutely fine. Now, if your first row, this row, is way too long, let's say you got to 36 or 37 centimeters, I would say start over with a smaller hook just for the collar until we start the main pattern, okay? Just so it's not too wide around the neck. Okay, next step, we are going to make half double crochets. Now, you have a choice. If you want, let's say if you are not going to do the hood, okay, then it will be a bit more easy to see this row right here. Okay, there's actually half double crochets, and then the next row is front post half double crochets. Okay, so if you want this higher up, you can do double crochets and then front post double crochets and a half double crochet in between. Completely up to you. It's just that half double crochets are a little bit harder to do, but because I'm going to do the hood, I want it to be a little bit smaller. Okay, so to start the next row, we are going to chain 2. Okay, so 1 and 2. This counts as our first half double crochet. Now it will count as a double crochet if you're doing double crochets. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so chain 2 and turn. Now we want to skip that very first stitch because the chain 2 is coming out of it. Start with the next one and make half double crochets. And you should have 53, including the chain 2, at the end of this row. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just like that, keep going to the end of this row. Okay, and my last half double crochet, this is number 53. Okay, next row, we start with chaining 2 and we turn. Now we're going to start our front post half double crochet or front post double crochet, depends on whatever you like. Okay, so I'm just gonna do front post half double crochet around the second, so I leave the chain 2, so just a half double crochet, and then into the next stitch I make a single crochet, and then I skip that half double crochet from the previous row. I go around it and I make a half double crochet, and then a single crochet into the next stitch. Make sure that you don't use the same stitch just because it is kind of hard to see. Okay, so make sure that you always use the next stitch over after you make a front post. Then a front post, half double crochet, and a single crochet into the next one. Front post, half double crochet, and a single crochet into the next one. So no, you make sure that you skip that stitch from the front post, okay? And a single crochet, and just like that, keep going to the end of this row. And we finish with the half double crochet into the chain 2, just like that. Okay, now if you want to check, you should have 26 front post stitches. Okay, so see, you can see them better like this: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 and 26, and then you have a stitch in between each of them and 2 at the end, so you are still on the same number 53. Okay, so the next row is going to be a bit more difficult. Okay, so grab 4 stitch markers. We're gonna quickly mark places where we are going to have our corners. Okay, so you see the numbers right here. Okay, I'm gonna take the hook out and we count now. Okay, so skip 7 stitches and put a stitch marker into the next one. Okay, so you count, it's easier to count from where you have finished. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7 into the next stitch, or into the stitch number 8, we put in a stitch marker. Okay, next, now we count 9 stitches and we put the stitch marker into the next one. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, we put the stitch marker into the next, into the 10th. Okay, now we're gonna skip 17 stitches and put the stitch marker into the next one. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17, and into the next stitch I put in my stitch marker. And one more, again 9 stitches, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, into the next one we put in a stitch marker, and we should have 7 stitches left. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the chain 2 is a stitch as well, so 7. Okay, that is sorted out. Okay, so the next row, now we are going to make bigger stitches at the back right here, so follow me closely. Okay, so we start with chaining 1 and we turn. Now we make single crochet into each stitch until the stitch marker. So 7 single crochet starting from the very first stitch. That is 1 into the next one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So the next is 3 single crochets into this marked stitch. Okay, so into the next stitch we make our first increase in the corner. So 1 single crochet, second into the same stitch, and third into that same stitch again. Now grab your stitch marker and mark your stitch number 2 from the hook. So the loop on the hook doesn't count, so this is 1 and this is the second one. Mark that. Okay, so we have a stitch after that. Then we will keep going with single crochets until we have 1 stitch left before the stitch marker. Okay, so 1 single crochet into each stitch. And then when you have 1 stitch left before the stitch marker, This is my last single crochet. I'm gonna make a half double crochet right here because we need to start raising those stitches into the higher ones, okay? So we'll make a half double crochet. Then we take the stitch marker out, and we're going to make into that stitch where the stitch marker was, we're going to make a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet back into that same stitch. Like that. Now put the stitch marker into your chain 1 space. The rest of the stitches, so this is the back, we make 1 double crochet into each stitch. And just like that, just keep going until you hit the stitch marker with double crochets. Okay, so finish with double crochets. The next stitch marker, we take it out. It is a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet back into that very same stitch. Put the stitch marker back in to that chain 1 space. It's actually easy to spot, but just keep it there for the beginning, okay, just to make things easier for yourself. Then we're going to do a half double crochet, okay, and then finish with single crochets until we get to the stitch marker. Okay, so stitch marker out, make 3 single crochets, one, 2, and 3. Stitch marker into the second stitch from the hook, so stitch 1 and stitch 2. And we finish with 1 single crochet into each stitch. And don't forget that we have a chain 2 in the very beginning. It's very important to not forget it. Okay, so this is my second last, and then the chain 2. In the top of that chain 2, I make a single crochet. Okay, so you should have, just in case you need, so after the stitch marker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches. Because we made an increase, we added an extra stitch in the front here. All the other sides got extra 2 stitches. So extra 2 stitches here, 2 stitches here, 2 here, and the front 1 as well. Okay, well, just in case you were wondering why you have more stitches than before. Okay, so next row, we start with chaining 1. And we turn. Now again, we make 1 single crochet into each stitch until we get to the stitch marker. So starting from the very first one, just keep making single crochets. Okay, then take the stitch marker out and make 3 single crochets here. 1, 2, and 3. Stitch marker into the second stitch from the hook. And continue with 1 single crochet until you have 1 stitch left on this side. And that very last stitch is going to be on top of this double crochet, okay? So right here, so this was a half double crochet. This time it's the double crochet, and we make a half double crochet right on top of it. Again, we're making it a little bit taller than the rest. Okay, now into the chain one space, we make a double crochet, chain one, and a double crochet back into that same stitch. You can put the stitch marker in the chain one space again if you need it. And now we're going to start our pattern. Okay, so this is what it's going to be. At this moment it's only at the back because we're trying to raise it up. Okay, so starting from the very first stitch from this double crochet right here, we're going to make front post puff stitches. So you're gonna yarn over, go around this very first double crochet from the previous row. You catch your yarn and pull it out and stop. You're gonna yarn over, go under it and out again, catch your yarn, pull it out, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on the hook. We're gonna yarn over, pull through 4 loops. You have 2 loops left, yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. Okay, so this is a front post puff stitch. Now into the next stitch we're gonna make a half double crochet. Then we're gonna skip this because this has a half double crochet on top. Around the next double crochet after that, again a puff stitch. So yarn over, under and out, catch your yarn and pull it out, yarn over, under and out the same way, catch your yarn, pull it out. You have 5 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 4 loops. You have 2 loops left, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Into the next stitch, half double crochet. And this is our pattern. Okay, this is what we're gonna do to get that I don't know what kind of feeling. It's nice little bumpy. Okay, again I'm gonna show you again with a puff stitch. So you skip this stitch around the next double crochet, so you yarn over, go under and out, right under it, all the way under it. Okay, catch your yarn and pull it out, give it a little pull to make it taller, not too much, just a little pull. Again, yarn over, go the same way in and out, yarn over, catch your yarn, pull it out. Again, you have 5 loops on your hook, pull through 4 and pull through the last 2 loops, half double crochet into the next one. So you just want to keep doing this until you run out of stitches. So this is just the back. Okay, so you can see this is how it looks like. So the yarn is a little bit light in color. It looks beautiful. Okay, so keep going. I'm gonna see you right here at the next stitch marker. Okay, and so the last double crochet again before the chain one, we make the front post stitch around it. Actually, I can move this out. We don't need this anymore. Okay, then into the chain one space where the stitch marker is, I'm going to take this out. We make a double crochet, chain one, and a double crochet. Stitch marker back in if you need it. Then the next stitch, so this one right here, is a half double crochet, and the rest are single crochets until you get to the stitch marker. Okay, so stitch marker here, take it out, 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3, all into that same stitch. Stitch marker into the second stitch from the hook, and continue on. Finish this row with 1 single crochet into each stitch. Now it's going to get easier from here. I just want to finish and show you what we actually done. Okay, and the very last one right here, single crochet. Okay, so if you would have a look at this right now, okay, so you can see the way these stitches are much higher than these. So this was done on purpose. If you put the corners together, you can see that we actually have the back sticking out higher than the front. Okay, so this is exactly what we wanted, and now we got it. Now the rest will be the 2 repeat rows. We're gonna get the foundation done right now, and then we will just keep repeating the 2 rows all over again until we get to the size that we need. Okay, so before starting the next row, now especially if you're a beginner and you're going to do the hood on it, now find stitch number 5 on the single crochets here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to put my stitch marker right under the stitch number 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right under it, in between the 2 single crochet rows. So you can see I just caught in between, because this is where we are going to attach the hood. Okay, and it is probably the easiest time to do it is now. Once we put that edge around here, it will be much harder to see, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right underneath it. So this is stitch number 5, and I put it down here. Okay, so just like that. Okay, done with that. Next, now we're gonna start the pattern, which is going to be quite easy. We start, just remember how we start the rows. So this is the repeat row number 1, or the double crochet row. So we start with chain 1 and we turn. Okay, we make a double crochet into the very first stitch. Okay, like this. So this is going to be your last stitch. Okay, if you find it difficult to find the last stitch, again, you can take one of the stitch markers, and once you make that double crochet, you can put it in here, and you will know that you have to finish here. Now I don't need it, I'll just keep it for now. Okay, and then 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to the stitch marker. And my last stitch before the stitch marker, last double crochet. Okay, now we're gonna take this out, and into the stitch with the stitch marker we make a double crochet. We're gonna chain 1 and a double crochet back into that same stitch. Okay, so double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet all into that same stitch. If you need, you can put the stitch marker in, but these increases or these corners will be really easy to find, so I'm just gonna leave it without the stitch marker for now. Okay, and then keep going with 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to the next stitch marker. Just double crochet. Now don't forget that you need to use the stitch from the double crochet from the previous row. So this is your last stitch before the chain 1. The chain 1 is actually here. So make sure you don't miss it, otherwise the pattern, you will not have enough stitches to make the next row. Okay, so make sure that, absolutely sure that you have a stitch in that double crochet from the previous row. After that, into that chain 1 space, we make a double crochet chain 1 and double crochet back into that same chain 1 space. Okay, again, put in a stitch marker if you need. Other than that, we keep going with 1 double crochet into each stitch. So you can see that this is my first stitch after the chain 1, and just double crochet until the next stitch marker. Again, make absolutely sure that you put a double crochet into the last stitch before the chain 1. Okay, so you can see this is a stitch from this double crochet, and then into the chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then starting from the next stitch, keep making double crochets. Then stitch marker out, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that same stitch, and finish with 1 double crochet into each stitch to the end of this row. And this is my last stitch right here, double crochet. Okay, so you finish repeat row number 1 with a double crochet. Okay, so next row is the repeat row number 2, and it starts with chaining 2, you chain 2 and you turn. Okay, so you skip the very first stitch and make the front post puff stitch around the second double crochet. So this counts as our first kind of half double crochet, okay, the chain 2. So then you're gonna yarn over, go around the second double crochet from the previous row and make that front post puff stitch. Then into the next stitch, half double crochet. Around the next double crochet, it's a puff stitch, front post puff stitch. And then half double crochet into the next stitch, front post, and we keep changing these 2 stitches, the puff stitch and the half double crochet, one after another until we get to that chain 1 space. Now you will always, on the repeat row number 2 or on the puff stitch row, okay, you will always end up, before the chain 1, you will always end up making a puff stitch around the last double crochet right here, okay? So this was an increase in the last row, and you will always have a puff stitch before the chain 1. Okay? Then into the chain 1 space, make a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. Then we start with a puff stitch, front post puff stitch around the first double crochet right here. So what you end up here, you do the same thing on the other side of the chain 1. You start with a puff stitch, front post puff stitch, and then half double crochet. And just like that, keep swapping these 2 around until you get to your next chain 1 space or your next stitch marker. And again, the last stitch before the chain 1 will always be a puff stitch, and then a double crochet into the chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same chain 1 space. And then you start again with a front post puff stitch, and then a half double crochet into the next stitch. And just like that, keep going until you get to the end of this row. Now remember, this is quite important, okay? That this, before the chain 1, is a puff stitch. Then you do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the chain 1 space. And then you start the next segment with a front post puff stitch. This is the easiest way. You will know that you are on the correct way of this pattern if it always works out perfect like that when you're doing your puff stitch row. Okay, so and the same here, so keep going and I will see you at the end of this row. Okay, and the puff stitch row we finish. Okay, so the second last stitch should be a puff stitch, and we finish with a half double crochet into the very last stitch, the half double crochet. Okay, I had this last stitch marked, I don't need it. Okay, so I will just quickly remind you of how the rows start and what we do in the corners. So I'll quickly show you 2 rows again, but technically they both repeat. Okay, so you start repeat row number 1 or the double crochet row with chaining 1 and turn, and you start in the very first stitch with a double crochet and then 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to the chain 1 space. Okay, so last stitch before the chain 1, double crochet into that chain 1 space, we make a double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet, and then you keep going with 1 double crochet into each stitch, and each chain 1 space gets a double crochet, chain 1 double crochet. Okay, just like that. I'll see you at the end of this row. And now, finishing the double crochet row, be absolutely sure that you have a double crochet into that chain 2 from the previous row. Okay, very important. You miss 1 stitch and those puff stitches are not going to turn out as they should with the stitch count. Okay, so chain 2 at the very end gets a double crochet. Okay, and we quickly remind you how to start the next row with the puff stitches. So we start with chaining 2, 1 and 2, we turn and we start a puff stitch around the second double crochet from the beginning. Then half double crochet, then a puff stitch, and keep going until you get to the chain 1 space. Okay, so again, the last stitch before the chain 1 should be a puff stitch. Now when I will be saying puff stitch, I mean front post puff stitch, okay? And then into that chain 1 space right after it, double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet back into that same chain 1 space, and then you start with a puff stitch again on the other side of the chain 1, half double crochet, and so on. So keep going. I'll see you at the end of this row. And you finish it into the last stitch with a half double crochet. And then again, chain 1, turn, and start repeat row number 1 with double crochet into the very first stitch, and so on and so on. So you want to keep making these 2 repeat rows until, okay, let me get my here, right here, until you get the A measurement. Okay, so this is the yoke. So for the size that I'm making, 3 to 6 months, it is 11 centimeters. So this is right here. We're gonna measure from underneath the single crochets, okay? So from right here onto the corner where the chain 1 is. Let me just put it in so it's easier to see, okay? So this is the chain 1, where we're doing the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And you want to measure, so where you finished the single crochet row to the stitch marker. Okay, so I'm at 5 centimeters now. I need to be at 11, so I probably need to add another 6 or 7 rows, or maybe even 5. Okay, so keep going, keep making these 2 rows until this right here gets to the measurement that you need from this chart. Okay, so so this one right here, so 11 centimeters for me, because I'm making size 3 to 6 months. Now in no way you should measure the back of it. Okay, so this is the back, because we added a longer rows here, so this side is going to be longer. As you can see, this is about 7.5, where this one is 5. We just need to measure in the front right here. Okay, so this is how it looks now. Okay, like this. So keep going until you're ready to connect. Okay, so here we are. I have reached the length of 11 centimeters according to the chart number A, or the letter A, 11 centimeters. Okay, so now we want our last row to be puff stitch row before we connect. As you can see, I have a double crochet row, so I have to add 1 row. That will make me a little bit over the measurement, but it is no problem. The only thing that will do, okay, it is we are going to make, because I need to add another row, and this line will be a little bit longer than it should be. I will adjust the length of the sleeve just by 1 centimeter. I will just make the sleeves a little bit shorter. So if you have the puff stitch row as your last one, and this measures what it needs to measure, you just wait there for a second. I will add the row, and then we will connect. If you have the double crochet row just like me, you just add an extra row with puff stitches. Now we want the last row before connection to be with puff stitches, just because it is a more accurate row for the measurement, okay, for the chest, just because it's a little bit tighter than the double crochet row. So it's better to have that one, even though you might be over the measurement. That's not a big deal. Okay, so keep going, or wait a second until I finish this row. Okay, so I have finished the row, and we should all now be after finishing the puff stitch row. It should be the last one before we join. Okay, so the next thing is to figure out how many chains we have to do underneath the armhole to see if we are missing length for the chest measurement. Okay, so I'm not going to pull on it when I measure. First of all, we're going to have a look. So measurement B. So right here, according to the age, 3 to 6 months, I need about 26 centimeters. Okay, it can be less, and I will show you how to figure out how many chains to add to reach it. Okay, so I'm looking for 26 centimeters. I am going to measure from the chain 1 space to the chain 1 space. Okay, so here to here at the back. So this is the back, and I'm looking for 26 centimeters. So from chain 1 to chain 1, I am exactly at 26 centimeters. That is absolutely perfect. I will only need to add 1 chain. Now if you are missing length on the chest here, let's say you are 2 centimeters short, okay, so let's say this was 24 and not 26, okay, so I would be 2 centimeters short. Then what you have to do is you have to measure out how many stitches fit into those 2 or 3 or whatever centimeters you are missing. Okay, so let's say if I would be missing 2 centimeters, I can see that 1, 2, 3 stitches fit into those 2 centimeters. So I would add 3 chains underneath each armhole. Now it has to be an odd number. It is very important, again, because we need to match those puff stitches in a line. Okay, so 1, 3, 5, 7. You probably won't need 7, but just in case I'm saying this, okay? So I would only need 1 because I have actually at the measurement that I need to be. And again, if you're missing, let's say 3 centimeters, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches exactly fit into the 3 centimeters. If you're missing 1, that would be 2 stitches. I would actually go for 3, just so better make it bigger than smaller. Okay, so it's super easy to connect. We are going to start and finish the rows as usual, but we will not have any more corners to make. So you want to start your double crochet row with chaining 1 and turn and make a double crochet, and then just make 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to your first chain 1 space, just like that. Keep going. Okay, so here we are, chain 1 space, the very first one. Okay, so crochet in the front here. Now into the chain 1 space we're going to put 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Then we are going to chain the amount of chains that we need to get to the measurement. Now I only need 1. You might need 3 or 5 or even 7. Okay, so I have chained 1. Whatever you chain, you have to chain the same on the other side, okay? Then we're gonna skip all this. This is going to be the sleeve. And into the other chain 1 space, so this one right here, make 2 double crochets. Just like that. I only have 1 chain. You might have 3 or 5. It doesn't really matter. And then continue with 1 double crochet until you get to the other side of the back or to the next chain 1 space. Okay, I am at the next chain 1 space. 2 double crochets into the chain 1 space. Then chain whatever you need. I chained 1 on this side, so I'm doing the same here. Just chain 1. I'm gonna skip all that. That is going to be the sleeve. Find the next chain 1 space, just right here for me, and make 2 double crochets. And then just continue crocheting with 1 double crochet until you finish the row. So finish this. Start the puff stitch row, and I will see you when you get a little closer to the chains right here to the connection point. Okay, so start as normal as we have done right here. Okay, so I am here. You can see I made a half double crochet and I have 2 double crochets left before my chains. So we make a puff stitch on the second last double crochet like this. Okay, and now I have a stitch, a chain. Okay, you might have more chains. Now this stitch, this last one, gets a double crochet. Then whatever number of chains you have done, each chain gets 1 double crochet. Now I only had 1 chain, so I only make 1 double crochet in there. If you had 3 chains, you're gonna have 3 double crochets, 1 double crochet into each chain. If it was 5, you're gonna have 5 double crochets. Then after you make your double crochets into the chains, the next stitch gets a double crochet. That's the top of the 2 double crochets where we have connected. And then we start the puff stitches again. So around the second one, puff stitch, and then half double crochet, and so on until you get to the other side of joining. Okay, just like that. We couldn't do a puff stitch right here in the middle or into those chains just because we didn't have any stitches. So it's just gonna have to be plain double crochets there. So keep going. I'll come back right here. Okay, so I am at the other joint. Again, the second last double crochet should be a puff stitch. Then a double crochet into the next stitch. Then your chains. I only have one chain, so just one double crochet there. As many chains as you have made, that's how many double crochets you should have. Then after you do your chains, the first stitch is a double crochet. And then a puff stitch, so skip the first double crochet around the second one, and then the rest is the same. Now after this, so we have joined, we have established our pattern back. Now the next few rows are super simple. You just need to go back and forth. So finish this row, start a double crochet row, and then do a puff stitch row. So you don't have any corners anymore. You will just be going this way and this way. The rows start and finish exactly the same, and your puff stitches should be in that same in one line like this. Okay, they shouldn't be like in the middle right here. So anyways, keep going for a few rows. So, and then we're gonna have to do a little bit of increasing. So for the smaller sizes, okay, so I'm not counting these puff stitch row that I have just made, okay? So for the smaller sizes, you want to have, like right under the armhole, you want to have 4 more rows, okay? So double crochet row, and then puff stitch row, double crochet row, and then puff stitch row. And then in the double crochet row on the 5th one, we're going to start increasing. Now for the bigger sizes, you want to make another 6 rows. You want to start the increasing a little bit lower down. So for 6 to 9 months and 9 to 12 months, you want to add another 6 rows before you start your increasing, just because the body is longer, so you can the increases can be a little bit lower down. Okay, so for now, keep going. So double crochets and then puff stitch, very simple, just like we have done here, apart from the increasing. We don't need that anymore. Okay, for now. So I'll see you in 4 more rows. Okay, so I am ready to start doing increases. Now, as you can see, not counting this row, I have 2 rows with puff stitches. So puff stitches and puff stitches. Just because this is smaller, I start earlier. If you're making sizes 6 to 9 or 9 to 12 months, you should have 3 of them. Okay, just to start a little bit lower down. Now we will do an increase. It is a slow increase. It will increase slowly just to have a little bit extra space here at the bottom, and we will do that throughout the next 8 rows. So, but technically we will only be increasing in the double crochet rows. Okay, so grab 2 stitch markers and place your cardigan down, onesie down like this, and just try to find a stitch just underneath the armhole on the straight line. So about this one. It doesn't have to be exact. It's just that you don't want to have it either right on the front or right at the back. Just somewhere in between. Okay, so when it increases both ways. And the same on the other one. About the very middle one. About here. It doesn't have to be exact, just approximate. Now we're gonna start a double crochet row as usual, and just keep making double crochets until you have 1 stitch left to your stitch marker. Okay, so just double crochets until you have 1 stitch left before. Okay, so I have 1 stitch left before the stitch marker, and this is the increase. We're gonna make 2 double crochets into that stitch before the stitch marker. So 1 and 2. Then the stitch marker comes out, we make a double crochet, just one in there. We want to put the stitch marker back into that same stitch, and then the stitch after the stitch marker gets 2 double crochets as well. Okay, so 2 double crochets in one stitch, 1 double crochet with a stitch marker, and then 2 double crochets right after that as well. The rest, until you get to the other side or to the other stitch marker, is just normal 1 double crochet into each stitch. And the same at the other stitch marker. The stitch before the stitch marker gets 2 double crochets. The stitch where the stitch marker was gets 1 double crochet. I'm gonna put the stitch marker back into that same stitch so I can use the same stitch for the other 3 increases. And then the stitch after gets 2 double crochets as well. And then the rest is just 1 double crochet into each stitch. So finish this row, start the next one, and I'll see you at the stitch marker here. Okay, so right here you can see the increase from the previous row. Now nothing special in here, you just keep going with your pattern. The only thing that I wanted to say right here is just be vigilant, because those 2 stitches are a little bit closer to each other. Just make sure that you don't miss them. Okay, don't miss the other one. So it's just like this, and then whatever stitch you have to do in the marked stitch, okay, you might have a half double crochet, you might have a puff stitch like me. So I have a puff stitch. You want to put that stitch marker back into that same stitch. Okay, so after you make your whatever, okay, you put that stitch marker back in there, and then continue on as normal. So there's a half double crochet and a puff stitch, and just like that keep going until you finish this row. Do the same exact thing right on the other stitch marker. So I'm going to finish this row and I will just show you one more time how I do the increase. So this is my second time increasing. Again, 1 stitch before the stitch marker, 2 double crochets before, stitch marker out, 1 double crochet, stitch marker back in, and 2 double crochets after that. And then the rest is just 1 double crochet and the same increase on the other side. Now we want to do this 4 times. So this is my second time, and then I'm gonna do 1 more in a double crochet row and 1 more in a double crochet row. Now technically you don't have to do 4, you can do more or less, as long as you can do them before we reach the length that we need. Okay, so this is what we're gonna talk about next. Okay, so measurement C. Okay, so this is the length. We're about here somewhere now. Okay, so we need to do a little bit more crocheting. Okay, so measurement C. For the size that I'm making for 3 to 6 months, it is 33 centimeters. Okay, it's less for the smaller ones and more for the bigger ones. So I'm looking for 33 centimeters. Now, when we're measuring for this measurement, we want to measure under the single crochet row, so where we have started the main pattern, from here to the bottom. Okay, so I'm at 20. I need 13 more centimeters, so want to be right here or over that. You don't want to be any shorter. We want to have definitely enough space there for the baby. Okay, so about here, so about 13 more centimeters in length, plus I have to remember to do those increases. Now the only thing is, when you are measuring, don't measure at the edge right here, because we are going to when we will be doing the rows up here, it's gonna change up a little bit. Besides, it's very loose right now, okay? So we're gonna fix that. So when you measure a little bit away from that. So just like that. Okay, so now keep going, and I will see you when we hit the length that we need. And now remember, when you finish at the length or a little bit over, you want your last row to be the puff stitch row. Okay, so you want to finish on, like, to have the 2 rows completely finished, the 2 repeat rows, so with the puff stitch. Okay, again, it will come into play later on when we have to do the legs. So let's say if I am at 33 centimeters and I am on double crochet row, I'm just gonna add another row with puff stitches, even though I will be over the measurement. Absolutely no problem. I'd rather have everything a little bit bigger than smaller. Okay, so keep going, and I will see you when we have the length done. Okay, so here we are. I have crocheted the length. You can see the C for the size that I'm making is 33 centimeters. And if I measure, here to here, it's 33, maybe 33 and a half. So anyways, the last row has to be, you had to finish with a puff stitch row. That will make a lot of sense later on. Now, if you need a little bit more length, don't worry if you go longer than this. This will just affect the length of the little legs, or the little the little legs here. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. You want to be absolutely sure that you have enough length there. It is an important place. Okay, and it doesn't have a whole lot of stretch downwards. It will stretch to the side better than lengthwise. Okay, so next step is, first of all, we have to find the very middle stitch here at the bottom. That's where we are going to connect the little line, okay, with the connect the front and the back. Now you can do that whichever way is easier for you. You can count all your stitches and then work out which one is the very middle one. Now I do it a little bit faster. I only count my puff stitches. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 20, 30, 40, 50. I have 52. Now I'm gonna divide that into 2. So 52 divided into 2 is 26. So I count out 26 puff stitches, and behind the number 26 there will be my middle stitch about here somewhere. I'll do the good counting. Now if you have an odd number of puff stitches, then you're gonna have the same number on both sides, and the middle one will be your very middle stitch. Okay, so whichever way makes it easier for you. So oh, I'm perfectly in the very middle. That's fantastic. Okay, and I'm in a half double crochet. Okay, anyway, so once you find the very middle, we just leave it there for now. The next step is we are going to do the edges right here. Okay, we're gonna finish that. Now, first of all, you want to decide which side you are gonna have your buttonholes on. Now, because this is for a girl, I'm gonna do it on the left side. So on this side, this is where I have my yarn attached now. So I will do my buttonholes in the row number 2. Now if it's for a boy, I would do it on the right hand side. So it's exactly the same. The only thing is this side is gonna have buttonholes, this one doesn't. You know, if I would be making that for boys, I would make this one without buttonholes and this one with. Okay, super easy. Okay, so first of all, we don't want to make too many or too little single crochets here. If you make too many, this edge is going to get longer, and then all the work we did with raising the back is we won't be able to see it, or it actually won't work. So we want to put about 5 single crochets in 4 rows, okay, in the side of 4 rows. So you can see this is a puff stitch and this is, so this would be 4 rows, so about 5 single crochets should be fine. Okay, I'm gonna start with chaining 1 and put a single crochet right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, about like this. Okay, and then again I'm gonna check for the next 2 or 4 rows, so 4, another 5 single crochets. Now it might be slightly different for you, just make sure that they are not making a little bow here once you make the single crochets. That would mean that, like, if they are spreading out like this, then you're making too many. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then the next 4 rows, one, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And just like that, keep going all the way to the top. I will see you about here somewhere. Okay, I'm getting to the top here, and again I'm gonna try to make them as even as possible. There's no counting here, just see wherever you can put them in so they are not too close to each other, especially that very, very top one. Okay, pull this down like this. Okay, so once we have our first row done, now if you don't if you're doing buttonholes on the other side, just chain 1 and start making single crochets downwards, and then again chain 1 and the 3rd row, so we're gonna have 3 rows of it, and you can just do the buttonholes on the other side. Now I will do it on this one because it is for a girl. I'm gonna get stitch markers. I'm gonna get 5 of them. I'm gonna have 5 buttons, and I will just measure them out. So if you're doing buttonholes on the other side, this is exactly the same way you're gonna do it, just on the other one. Okay, so we want the top buttonhole to be quite high up, so I would say on the 2nd stitch from the top. Okay, and then I'm gonna count, I will make a little guess now. I would say about 8 stitches apart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I skip 8 stitches. And my second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 into the number 9. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 into the number 9. And one more. I think the bottom one is going to be quite close to the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and into the 9. That is perfect. Now if you need to move them around, you can leave bigger or smaller amount of stitches in between. This is perfect. I'm happy with this. You can have 6 or 7 stitches in between, doesn't really matter. Now grab one of your buttons, and we're just gonna see that we're definitely making the buttonholes big enough or perfect for our buttons. So to start the next row, we're going to chain 1 and turn. And again, if you're not making buttonholes, you just have 1 single crochet into each stitch. Now I will do my buttonholes, so single crochet into the very first stitch, and then wherever you have put your next stitch marker in. Okay, so we're gonna chain 2. Now that is presuming that your buttons are not very small. My ones are probably 2 centimeters wide, maybe a little bit less. And now first of all, I'm gonna try to skip 1 stitch. exactly where the stitch marker is, and I'm going to single crochet into the next one. I'll see if this is big enough for the buttonhole. I don't like when buttonholes are really wide and the buttons don't really hold on. This is absolutely perfect. Now I have chained 2 and I have skipped 1 stitch. If you need bigger buttonholes, you can chain 2 and skip 2 stitches, okay, or even chain 3. The only thing is to remember is how many stitches you have skipped underneath there, okay? Just because when we're making next row, we're gonna have to make the same amount of single crochets into under the chain as we have skipped, and not as many as we have made the chains. Okay, so then in between, I'm just going to make single crochets until I get to the next stitch marker. Okay, so stitch marker there. Again, I'm gonna chain 2, skip a stitch, and keep single crocheting. Okay, so do this to the very bottom of this row. Okay, so single crochet down, 1 more row. I'm gonna chain 1. Now in this row, I am going to count my single crochets. I just need to make absolutely sure that I make the same number of single crochets on the other side. So I want to know the exact number. So I'm just gonna count with 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I have my chains here. Again, make sure that you make the same amount of single crochets as you have skipped underneath. I skipped 1, but I have 2 chains, so I'm gonna just make 1 single crochet. That is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just keep going. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and just keep going, counting the stitches. And the very last one, now I always like to make, instead of a single crochet into the last stitch on the top, just to make the edge look a little nicer, I make a slip stitch instead of a single crochet. Single crochets leave a little bump there. I just want it to be as perfect as I can, so I'm just doing a slip stitch. So I have 52 stitches, and now I will need to make the same amount on the other side. So I'm just gonna cut off my yarn like this. And if you see, if I put the bottom with the top, my front is nice and lower than the back. So perfect. Now the other side. The other side we start on the top right here, and we are gonna crochet down. Now remember, if you're going to do the hood, this is a great time to mark that stitch number 5 or after 5 stitches approximately, because it will be harder to see afterwards if you're making the hood. Okay, so I'm gonna make a slip knot. I'm gonna attach right at the very top. Okay, I'm gonna chain 1, and I'm gonna start making those single crochets, and I'm gonna make sure that I have 52. So the same kind of thing as we done on the other side. 2, 3. I'm gonna try to make 5 into the 4 rows. So I have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So just keep going all the way down. Okay, so same amount of single crochets. Now if you're doing buttonholes on this side, starting from the top, put in your stitch markers and do the exact same thing. Now I only need 2 more rows of single crochets, which I'm just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. Okay, so keep going, finish your edges. Okay, so I need this row and 1 more, so we have 3 rows in total. Okay, so I have finished 3 rows, and now we're going to connect the bottom. Now the side with the buttonholes has to be on top. Okay, so if you have buttonholes on this side, make sure that this side is on top, and then we're just going to make 3 single crochets connecting those 2 pieces. Okay, now I need this side on, so I'm just gonna pull that through in here. Could be a little hard to get the first one. Okay, I'm just gonna pull this through. I'm going to chain 1 and then single crochet all the way through to the other side, catching both of them. So 1, 2, and 3. Now make sure that you don't go into the pattern itself, that you are still staying on that edge, just like that. Okay, so we made 1 row of single crochets here, the 3 single crochets. Now for a second, just have a look if everything looks nice and neat, if you don't need to change anything, because it will be harder once we connect. That looks absolutely perfect. You can see the back is coming out, the front is lower down, absolutely perfect. Okay, so we have 1 row of single crochets. We're gonna do 2 more rows. So we're gonna chain 1 and turn. Oop. Okay, so like this. Row 2 is simple, 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3, and 1 more. We're gonna chain 1 and turn, and 3 more single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Now we want to connect this to the very middle at the back. Now because we have 3 stitches, the second stitch is the very middle, so we want to start connecting the stitch before, so it would be 1, 2, and 3. Now if you find it easier to sew it on, absolutely perfect, no problem. Now I want to slip stitch, so I'm just gonna turn this inside out. I'm sorry, the camera is really close, I need to do this. Okay, on the inside, like that. Okay, now we'll just slip stitch. It's a bit of a mess, but just for a few stitches. Okay, so like I said, okay, we start the stitch before the stitch marker. I'm just gonna connect, and now I'm gonna slip stitch into the first stitch here and into the same stitch before the stitch marker, or whichever way it's easier for you. Okay, I'm gonna take the stitch marker out into the second stitch here and the next stitch here. Yes, second and second, and third and third. I'm gonna chain one and cut my yarn. Now that wasn't very easy to see. It's just once the pieces are getting bigger, it's getting harder to move it around and make it very obvious. Okay, and this is where I'm going to end part 1, and I will see you in part 2. We will do the legs, we will do the sleeves and the hood if you're going to do this. So it should look about like this. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.